Every single time you send an email, or stream a movie, or even just ask your smart speaker for the weather, you're tapping into a massive system of digital addresses. It's this invisible foundation that our whole connected world is built on. But here's the thing. For years, that very foundation has been facing a crisis. We've been running on a system that has literally completely run out of room. So today, we're going to dig into how we went from that address shortage to a future of near infinite connectivity.
Okay, just think about it for a second. In your own home, you've got your phone, your laptop, right? Obvious ones. But what about your TV, your tablet, a smart speaker, maybe a doorbell camera, a connected thermostat? Whoa, the number adds up really fast, doesn't it? And every single one of those devices needs its own unique address to get online.
And that's exactly where the IP address comes in. IP stands for Internet Protocol, and you can honestly just think of it like a street address for your house. It's a totally unique identifier that tells the Internet exactly where to send information for every single device. It's how your request for cat video gets to the right server and comes back to your screen and not, your neighbor's.
Now, luckily, you don't have to memorize a long string of numbers every time you want to check out a website. Thank goodness, right? That's the job of the DNS, the Domain Name System. It's basically the Internet's phone book. It translates those easy-to-remember domain names into the IP addresses that computers actually need to talk to each other.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the basics of this address book. Then we'll dive headfirst into the crisis of running out of them. We'll even look at a clever trick the pros use called subnetting. After that, we're exploring the massive new universe of IPv6, and finally, what this all means for the future. So let's start with that address book. This whole system of unique numbers, it's the core engine that allows billions with a B, of devices to find and talk to each other all across the globe.
Okay, but here's where the story takes a turn. See, the original system, the one that's been in place since the early 80s, it was never, ever designed for the world we live in today. It's called IPv4, and, well, it's completely full. The old system, IPv4, was built using a 32-bit address. And what that gets you is a grand total of about 4.3 billion unique addresses. Now, back in the 80s, that must have seemed like more addresses than we could ever possibly need. But today, that's actually less than the number of smartphones in the world. And yep, in a world with billions of people, and each of us owning multiple connected devices, it turns out 4.3 billion is just not even close to being enough. We have officially completely run out of new IPv4 addresses.
And look, this isn't some problem looming in the future. It's been our reality for over a decade. The main global authority that hands these out ran out of new address blocks way back in 2011, so we've been getting by with these complex workarounds, like something called NAT. You can think of NAT like trying to put an entire office building behind a single street address. Sure, it kind of works, but it's clunky, it's inefficient, and it's created a much more complicated and fragmented internet.
So, with these addresses being so incredibly scarce, network professionals had to get creative. They needed ways to stretch their limited supply as far as it could possibly go. And that led to some really ingenious techniques, one of the most important being subnetting.
It is such a fundamental skill, in fact, that networking expert Wendell Odom calls it the #1 skill for CCNA, which is a really key certification for network engineers. At its core, it's a super clever way to take one big block of addresses and chop it up into smaller, more manageable little networks.
So, without getting totally lost in the weeds of binary math, the process is basically about using a subnet mask to logically slice and dice a big network into smaller, way more efficient subnetworks. It allows network admins to squeeze every last drop of value out of their limited addresses. It's a brilliant hack for managing scarcity for sure, but it's still just a workaround for a much bigger problem.
Because, hacks and workarounds can only get you so far. The internet needed a real long-term solution. And that solution is the next generation of the Internet Protocol, IPv6.
And this, right here, shows you the incredible leap we're taking. We are going from a 32-bit system with 4.3 billion addresses to a 128-bit system. And the number of new addresses? It's 340 undezillion. That is a 340 with 36 zeros after it. It is a number so ridiculously vast, it's almost impossible to even wrap your head around. To put it simply, we are not going to run out of addresses ever again.
And it's not just about more addresses, it's about smarter addresses. IPv6 gets rid of the old inefficient broadcast method, which was like shouting in a crowded room, and it introduces much more precise ways to communicate.
Unicast is for talking to a single device, multicast is for a specific group, and Anycast sends data to the nearest of several devices, which is fantastic for speed and efficiency.
Yeah, the benefits here are just massive. You've got that near infinite address space, obviously, but IPv6 also simplifies how data packets are put together, which makes everything faster. Security is now built in from the ground up, not just an optional add-on. We also get auto-configuration, which makes setting up new devices an absolute breeze, and much better support for things like streaming video and audio calls.
And here's one of the secrets to all that new efficiency. This is the new IPv6 header. It's so much simpler. All the optional, nice-to-have information has been moved into these things called extension headers. This means that the routers on the internet don't have to waste precious time checking for stuff that isn't even there, and that speeds up the whole process.
You know, putting them side by side like this really makes the difference crystal clear. The address size just explodes, configuration goes from a manual headache to automatic, that old-fashioned broadcasting gets replaced by efficient multicasting, and security, which was just optional before, is now required, baked-in part of the protocol. It is a fundamental upgrade across the entire board.
So, if IPv6 is so much better, why isn't absolutely everything using it today? Well, that brings us to the final and really crucial part of the story, the transition itself.
And here's the big challenge. IPv4 and IPv6 just don't speak the same language. They are not directly interoperable. This means the entire internet can't just flip a switch overnight. It has to be a slow, gradual process, with both systems running side by side, probably for years to come. In fact, right now, the old IPv4 protocol is still handling the majority of the world's internet traffic.
But make no mistake, that transition is well underway. And it leaves us with this incredibly exciting question. We're moving from a digital world that was defined by scarcity to one of almost unimaginable abundance. So what does that future look like? What new technologies, what new ideas become possible when every light bulb, every sensor on a farm, every single cell in a medical device can have its own unique, secure place on the internet? That is the limitless future we are building, one new address at a time.